was his birthday. He could not have known that he was living the last moments of his breathing the last breaths of his 26 years of life. He was being watched. He was being followed. A plot hatched between them with every one of their collective evil intentions. And in this video, you will clearly see in the evidence Mr. Davion Murphy taking full credit for his role in this shooting.
Charles Jones, known as Julio Fulio, was 26 years old. He had survived gunshots before, survived attempts on his life before, and built a name big enough to make him one of the most recognizable figures in Jacksonville drill. He went to Tampa to celebrate his birthday. In the early morning hours of June 23, 2024, he was shot and killed outside a hotel near the University of South Florida. 2 years later, surveillance footage from that night is being played in a Hillsborough County courtroom. Prosecutors say it shows a coordinated ambush, and 4 men are now on trial for his murder.
In the early morning hours of Sunday, June 23rd, Jacksonville rapper Charles Jones arrived at Teaser's Gentlemen's Club in Tampa for a paid performance.
He's the gentleman wearing the red beanie hat.
That's Tampa Police Homicide Detective Juan Ramos identifying the rapper, known as Julio Fulio, in new surveillance video from the club's parking lot. Suspects Alicia Andrews, Isaiah Chance, and Sean Gathright watched this video in court Thursday, too. All 3 faced charges in Jones's death in what investigators say was an ongoing rival gang war. After leaving Teasers, the rapper went down the street to Truth 18 nightclub for an after party, posting on social media in live time.
This is the video here from his Instagram.
Surveillance video from outside that club shows how 2 suspect vehicles continued to follow Jones, just as they did at Teasers, and eventually to the Home 2 Suites near USF.
They're approaching the victim's position on foot.
Video from the hotel and a parked Tesla show 3 shooters firing several shots at the vehicle Jones was riding in, killing him. With video playing such a big role in this case, Gathwright's attorney pushed back.
Once again, there is no actual video or identifiable footage that shows that Mr. Gathright was physically present at Home 2 Suites. Is that correct?
Correct.
The state presented a picture from Gathwright's cell phone taken 1 day after the murder, showing a bottle of Don Julio. The detective testified that, based on gang knowledge, this represents an insult to the rapper Julio Fulio. Here's Gathwright's attorney.
Were you able to ascertain if my client, Mr. Gathright, was the one that actually purchased Don Julio?
No.
So anybody could have been at that club and purchased it?
Yes, of course.
In Tampa, Ariel Placencia, Fox 13 News.
The court footage from the first days of that trial is now giving the public its clearest look yet at how the attack unfolded.
As I said, Kenyatta Bullard is a certified celebrity. And you also saw that. That is just a still from that video. And that's talking about both Charles Jones and his gang, 6 Block. Charles Jones, also known as Julio Fulio, also known as Fulio, Mr. 6, or just 6. Like Kenyatta Bullard, the person in the last 2 videos that was the lead rapper, who is the public face of ATK, Mr. Jones, the evidence will show, was the public face of 6 Block. He was the main person in that gang, the main spokesperson, and he was also a celebrity with tens of millions of followers on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify.
Charles Jones was from Jacksonville's East Side and built his name under the alias Julio Fulio. He was not a minor figure in that city's drill scene. He was one of its most visible faces. Tens of millions of followers. That is not a local figure. That is someone who had broken out of Jacksonville into a genuinely national audience while remaining deeply embedded in the conflicts and affiliations that defined his life in that city. The prosecution in this trial has gone to considerable lengths to establish that Julio and the rival faction, ATK and 1200, were engaged in a years-long gang war that expressed itself through music, through diss tracks, through social media posts, and through repeated real-world violence. Julio was the face of one side of that war. The men on trial for his murder are alleged to be part of the other side. Prosecutors say the killing in Tampa cannot be understood without the long-running Jacksonville conflict behind it. 6 Block on one side, ATK and 1200 on the other. Julio had survived earlier violence before this trip, including a shooting months before his death. The trip was public from the beginning. Julio posted about it on Instagram, promoted a pool party that was later shut down, and announced club appearances in Tampa, the location clearly visible. The prosecution's argument is that those posts were not just seen by his fans, they were seen by the people who wanted him dead. Isaiah Chance and his girlfriend, Alicia Andrews, were at Teasers that night, allegedly tracking Julio's movement and relaying real-time location information to the assault team. Sean Gathright driving a black Chevy Impala with Rashad Murphy and Davion Murphy inside. The silver Chevy Cruze, driven by Chance with the Alicia in the passenger seat, was the surveillance vehicle. The Impala was carrying the shooters.
It will be clear to all of you in the state's evidence that this conspiracy hatched not minutes, not hours, but days and weeks before this date, before this murder. A conspiracy formulated in the hearts and minds of these 4 defendants with one common agreed upon goal: death, murder, and violence. A conspiracy that began days before, hundreds of miles away from Tampa. A conspiracy that would span through several days, over 500 miles of travel. A conspiracy that involved reservations being made, disguises selected, gear being obtained, weapons being selected, manipulated, loaded, and made ready. Transportation was obtained, vehicles with specific purposes, and a plot that required advanced planning and logistics to include housing, communications, and transport would materialize and become reality: a criminal, murderous operation. These conspirators traveling from the northeast corner of this state all the way here to Tampa, following their target, conspiring to murder Charles Jones, the evidence will show, not in his hometown, but here in Tampa, where his guard would be down while he was celebrating his birthday. You will see in this evidence the clock-like precision of these conspirators as they work together as a team. The conspirators: Isaiah Chance, also known as Gutta Zay, Gutta Man, Gutta, and Mr. Rich Off War. Sean Gathright, Davion Murphy, and Rashad Murphy, also known as Ghost or Ghost 187. There was a 5th participant that night, Alicia Andrews, who was Mr. Chance's, defendant Isaiah Chance's girlfriend, and who, along with Isaiah Chance, would provide the essential surveillance for this conspiracy. to understand the wicked purpose that drove and motivated this shared desire to end Charles Jones' life, we need to look back in time in the city of Jacksonville to the lives and associations of Mr. Jones and all of these defendants. We'll go back in years, and I'm going to walk you through a gang war that has been occurring in the city of Jacksonville, and that in this case traveled here and spilled into our streets here in Tampa.
Prosecutors want the jury to see this as planned, not spontaneous. Their timeline says the group traveled from Jacksonville with vehicles, lodging, communications, and weapons already arranged before Julio's birthday weekend began. The surveillance footage played in court during the opening statements of this trial is what this video is about. It comes from multiple sources: hotel cameras at the Home 2 suites facing the portico, additional cameras at the Holiday Inn, and most significantly, the Sentry Mode camera on a Tesla parked in the hotel's charging area on the west side of the building. The Tesla owner was contacted by investigators the morning after the shooting. The owner showed detectives the footage on the Tesla screen. They collected it, and what it captured is a level of detail that the hotel cameras alone could not have provided. The surveillance footage lays out a clear sequence. Julio's Dodge Charger arrives at the hotel, his girlfriend follows in a Hyundai, and two friends are in a Nissan Altima. Julio briefly goes inside the hotel to deal with the room issue. Prosecutors say the assault team is already in position, with one vehicle tracking and another staging the shooters out of sight on the west side of the building. 3 masked gunmen emerged from the west side of the hotel. Prosecutors say one had a Glock, another moved near a Lexus SUV, and a third, allegedly Davion Murphy in an orange ski mask, took position near the Tesla charging area. Julio's Charger was boxed into the attack path and the shooting began. The Tesla alarm activating from the concussion of rifle fire gives the jury one of the most specific and damning pieces of technical evidence in the entire case. It places a shooter firing a high-powered rifle at close range to that vehicle at the precise moment the attack was happening. The Tesla footage does not just show a person running by. It shows a person running by holding a rifle in an orange ski mask and all black, and then firing that rifle down the west side of the hotel as Julio's Charger attempted to flee northbound. The prosecution says that person is Davion Murphy. Xavier Edwards tried to drive out of the portico but ran into crossfire. The Charger jumped a curb and came to rest in the north parking lot. Julio was mortally wounded inside the vehicle, while Xavier Edwards and Gino Norris, both shot but alive, ran into the Holiday Inn, leaving a blood trail officers later followed upstairs.
At some point when you were stationed at Truth 18, did you receive a call regarding a hotel, Home 2 Suites, and the Holiday Inn located on McKinley?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Approximately what time did you receive that phone call?
I believe it was about 4:40 in the morning.
And based on that phone call, what did you do?
They told us that there was basically someone shot. At that point in time, my squad responded priority up to Home 2 Suites.
And how you're dressed today, is that how you would have been dressed back then, in the same type of uniform?
Yes, ma'am.
And what sort of vehicle did you drive back in June of 2024?
At that, I had an unmarked Dodge Charger.
And you said that not only yourself responded to that location, but that your unit did. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I had 6 officers working for me that night, and all of us responded there.
Okay. And were they in different vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were any of those marked Tampa police officer vehicles?
Yes, all of those were marked.
Okay. Lights and sirens?
Yes.
The call came in just before 12:45 in the morning. Multiple 911 calls from people hearing gunshots. Sergeant Portman's unit was stationed nearby at Truth 18, another club monitoring the area. They had received intelligence before the shift, an email flagging that Julio Fulio was in Tampa and had bad relations with opposing groups from Jacksonville. The Tampa Police Department knew he was in the city. Officers had been monitoring his social media movement throughout the night. None of that was enough to prevent what happened. By the time the call came in, it was already over.
Had you had any information that a rapper from Jacksonville was going to be there that night?
At that point in time in the night, no. We knew he was in the area, but not at Truth 18.
Okay. And so there was nothing that was alerted or out of the ordinary, to your knowledge, at Truth 18 while you were there?
No, ma'am. It was just the normal crowd that we were trying to keep control of.
And then after you received that call at 4:40 for shots fired, what did you do at that point?
Like I said, I left the parking lot near Truth 18, proceeded basically westbound on Bush Boulevard and then northbound on 40th Street towards the hotels.
How far is Truth 18 from those hotels, the Home to Suites and the Holiday Inn that are located on McKinley?
I'd say roughly about 3 miles.
How quickly were you able to get to that location?
I don't know, less than 2-3 minutes.
What did you see when you responded to that location?
As I was coming northbound on 40th Street towards Fowler Avenue, I saw a dark, like silver Hyundai coming. That would have been westbound on Fowler Avenue towards 40th Street. At that point in time, the vehicle decided to make a left-hand turn on the 40th Street, drive over the curb, and go into the parking lot.
At that point, did you know anything about that vehicle?
No, ma'am.
What was the information that you received regarding the shots fired call?
Basically, there's just somebody shot in the parking lot, and possibly in the hotel.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So when you saw that erratic behavior by that gray or silver Hyundai, what did you do?
I proceeded after that car thinking it would possibly be involved. At that point in time, I still had my lights and sirens on, tried to stop that vehicle. We drove to the south side of Home 2 Suites, then back to the west, and came all the way around near the Holiday Inn and pulled up in the parking lot and finally stopped.
Okay. And what happened when that vehicle finally stopped?
That vehicle stopped. There was a female that got out of the driver's side, a male and a female got out of the passenger side, and they started yelling about helping their friend who was in the vehicle to my right that I noticed that was all shot up.
Okay. And was that the first time that you had noticed that vehicle that had all been shot up?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that located?
It was basically 10 feet away from where that vehicle stopped to my right.
Okay.
In
And
the
can you
parking lot.
describe, I know that you said that there was a female that was yelling, as well as there were 2 other individuals. Was it, I think you said another female and a man, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there other units or other agencies that were responding to that location, as well as officers from the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, USFPD showed up.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
At that point, I listened to them. They said, the shots. I looked over at the car, noticed it had bullet holes in it. I went over to the car to check the person inside to see if there was any life or anything I could do for life-saving matters at that point in time. I noticed he was deceased at the time, and then saw a blood trail heading into the Holiday Inn.
Officers followed the blood trail into the Holiday Inn and found Xavier Edwards and Gino Norris wounded on the 3rd floor. Both survived after emergency aid. 31 9mm shell casings were recovered from the portico area, no rifle shell casings. The attackers had attached brass catchers to their rifles, mesh devices that fit over the ejection port and catch the casings as they fire, preventing them from being deposited at the scene. The prosecution argues this level of preparation is direct evidence of premeditation. You do not attach brass catchers to a rifle in the spontaneous moment of a conflict. You attach them when you are planning a murder and thinking about what evidence you want to leave behind. 4 men are seated at the defense table in Judge Michelle Sisko's courtroom in Hillsborough County. Isaiah Chance, 23 years old, is charged with first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy. Sean Gothraith, 20 years old, the prosecution alleges he drove the Impala and was one of the rifle shooters. Rashad Murphy, 32 years old, is alleged to be the Glock shooter, operating left-handed, the weapon modified to fire fully automatic. Davion Murphy, 29 years old, alleged to be the 3rd shooter with the rifle in the orange ski mask, firing down the west side of the hotel as Julio's Charger fled northbound.
Mr. Murphy is the biggest, heaviest one of these defendants, just like the shooter who takes the rearward position in this attack. That's Mr. Murphy when he was arrested. You will see tattoos. You see many on his neck and chest. He has a 1200 tattoo on the back of his neck. He has the name of people from 1200 who have been murdered tattooed on his body. And in this video, you will clearly see in the evidence Mr. Davion Murphy taking full credit for his role in this shooting. That is just after his arrest, when he is left alone in an interview room. Just to show, because it was a video, I wanted you to see a couple of still shots of Mr. Davion Murphy in action. You can see the muzzle flash, you can see the orange or reddish ski mask, and you can see his position, shooting directly at the charger, shooting again at the charger, and a last time. And there's Mr. Gathright on the bottom, following Mr. Edwards and the charger and Mr. Jones. And then Mr. Murphy returning, being caught on the Tesla video.
Taking full credit in an interview room, that is what the video shows. The prosecution says that is what Davion Murphy, left alone after his arrest, on camera, allegedly acknowledged his role in the shooting. The defense for Davion Murphy argues that he was drunk and playing to the music being played in the room. The jury will decide which explanation they believe. What is not in dispute is that the video exists, that it was introduced at trial, and that the prosecution considers it one of the strongest pieces of evidence in a case that already includes hotel surveillance footage, Tesla Sentry Mode video, license plate reader data, cell phone mapping, and Airbnb booking records, all pointing in the same direction. All four defendants have pleaded not guilty. All four defense attorneys delivered opening statements, arguing that the prosecution's case is built on circumstantial evidence that cannot definitively prove beyond a reasonable doubt that any specific client committed any specific act. The openings, in the words of the commentary covering this trial, turned into something of a blame game, each attorney pointing at the other defendants' clients as the more clearly implicated ones. Chance's advocate argues that presence doesn't equal guilt. Being in Tampa doesn't prove knowledge of a murder plot. Using a phone doesn't prove you were communicating about a killing. Loading bags doesn't prove you knew what was in them. The standard the defense is pushing for is simple. The state must prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt, and Petrus argues they cannot do so for Isaiah Chance specifically rather than for the group collectively.
Isaiah doesn't have to prove anything. I mention that again, not that you don't know that, you know that very well. Not only because it's constitutional bedrock, because I want you to view this state not through Isaiah, but through what the state can prove, and more importantly, what they cannot prove. I ask you to hold the state to their very high burden, which is ruling out every reasonable doubt of every fact and element necessary to prove the allegations against Mr. Chance. That is their burden, that's what you swore to hold them to, and that's what I'm going to ask you to do. As you know, they're attempting to prove three things against Isaiah Chance. Him as a principal, two things. Isaiah is a principal, premeditated murder, and conspiracy to commit that murder. And to do that, they need to prove three things. That Isaiah wanted Charles Jones dead. I ask you to look for that conscious intent that he wanted Charles Jones dead. Not speculation, not inferences, the conscious intent. Make the state prove that. I believe they will be unable to do so once you've seen all the evidence. They also have to prove that he had actual knowledge of the plan, that specific plan, to kill Charles Jones that night. Again, not inferences, not speculation, not assumptions on what his behavior may or may not have meant. I believe at the end of the evidence they will be unable to do so once you've seen it all. And lastly, that he did something, some act, some concrete step. Mr. Harmon showed you the list of what constitutes that in the principal statute. Help, assist, cause, encourage. However, I believe once you see all the evidence, any act that he's done requires you to speculate as to its meaning. And that you also speculate as to the knowledge he had when he did that act. Watch carefully through this trial. I believe when you see all the evidence, the state will be unable to prove any of those three things. And if they can't prove any of those, you would have to find Mr. Chance not guilty.
Gathrid's advocate goes further. His client was 18 years old when all of this happened. He was not a known gang member. No Jacksonville gang detective had ever heard of him before Tampa police made contact. And the guns found at his mother's home do not match the shooting. The ammunition found in his vehicle matches the brand recovered at the scene, but the defense frames that as weak evidence in a world where MaxTech 9mm is one of the most common ammunition brands available.
Gathright had nothing to do with these shootings that took place in Tampa. You've just heard a lot of theory from the state for several hours today. And one thing I want to remind you, you haven't heard any evidence yet. You saw Mr. Harmon showing you videos saying, this is so-and-so, this is Sean Gathright, this is Davion Murphy. No, you're the ones who are going to decide who these people are. The state gave you its theory, but over these next couple of weeks, you're going to decide, you're going to put the puzzle together. And what Mr. Harmon said, what I'm saying, what Mr. Petraeus said, it's not evidence. You'll be seeing evidence over the next couple of weeks, but you haven't seen anything yet.
The Davion Murphy defense rests on the cell phone argument. His attorney says Murphy's phone was not at the Home 2 suites at the time of the killing. His phone did not hit cell towers in the vicinity of the murder scene. The state cannot show its phone at that location. If his phone was not there, the defense argues, then the state cannot prove he was there. The prosecution's counter is that the Tesla footage shows a shooter with a rifle in an orange ski mask, and the physical build and positioning are consistent with Davion Murphy. They have stills, they have muzzle flashes, they have a man running with a rifle. The question the jury has to answer is whether that is enough.
Again, over and over again, what the state says or what I say is not evidence. So simply because he was up here talking that long means absolutely nothing in the form of evidence. And I would ask, you keep hearing the name Murphy, and we've identified, obviously there's a Rashad Murphy and a Davion Murphy, and I ask you all to please make sure that you keep those names separate throughout these proceedings. The court will instruct you at the close of all the evidence that you will have to make a decision based on individual facts or lack thereof as to each, and I'm concerned for Davion that the name Murphy gets maybe brought up and there may be some confusion as to which Murphy. So please keep that in your mind. So what are the facts of this case that the state outlined for 3 hours? And that is, we'll agree that on June 23rd, 2024, Charles Jones, known as Julio Fulio, was in fact shot and killed at the Home 2 Suites in Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida. As a result of that homicide, 5 people were originally charged: Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, Alicia Andrews, and Davion Murphy. That's why we're here, okay? And what was the motive for that homicide? The state alleges that it was a gang war, and it may well have been a gang war. They went through a number of individuals over the years, all the way back to, I believe, to 2018, and I'm not going to go through them all, but I believe they talked about Spaz and Bibby and Jake Jidd and Lou Hobie and Tilly and Mr. Jones himself, who was shot, that this was the background of the gang war that was going on. So that it's absolutely clear Mr. Davion Murphy is in no way a suspect, a defendant, or anything to do with any of those homicides and the attempted homicide on Mr. Charles Jones, okay? It has nothing to do with Davion Murphy. It has to do with the alleged gang wars between some gangs.
Prosecutions are framing this trial as bigger than a single hotel shooting. Their case is that the murder was the product of a years-long feud in which music, social media, and real-world violence were all tied together.
The state's evidence in this case is going to reach back to the early morning darkness of June 23rd, 2024, and we are going to drag that conspiracy out of that darkness and into the bright lights of this courtroom for you, all of you, and everyone to see its wicked and vile nature, to see the malice, and to see the premeditation. For Charles Jones, there were no more birthdays. all that was left was a funeral. The state's evidence will prove to each and every one of you, beyond any doubt, we had a lot of discussions about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We're going to prove this case to you beyond any doubt. There's not going to be any doubt. The evidence in this case will convince each of you. You will know, and it'll be crystal clear to you, that all four of these defendants conspired and murdered Charles Jones.
No more birthdays. That is the weight of what happened. Charles Jones was 26 years old on the night he was killed. He had turned 26 on June 21st. He was 2 days into his 26th year. The drill rap career, the streaming numbers, the Instagram followers, the status he had built in Jacksonville, none of it was protection in the early morning hours of June 23, 2024. The people who came for him that night had traveled 500 miles. They had booked Airbnbs, scouted clubs, tracked his social media, and followed his cars through the streets of Tampa with a coordinated precision that the prosecution is putting on full display in this courtroom. Prosecutors also used diss tracks released after the killing as motive evidence, arguing that the music and the real-world violence were inseparable parts of the same feud. The trial began on April 22, 2026 in Hillsborough County before Judge Michelle Sisko. All four defendants pleaded not guilty, and the death penalty remains on the table. As of April 24th, the case was still in its early stages, with opening statements completed and witness testimony underway. The footage now playing in court is the clearest public account yet of how Charles Jones was killed. Prosecutors say it proves a coordinated ambush. The defense says it still does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt who each defendant actually was at that scene. The jury will decide. After seeing the footage and hearing both sides, do you think the surveillance evidence is enough to identify the shooters, or does the defense have a real point about reasonable doubt? Let me know in the comments, and the next video is on your screen right now.